Corporate America says they want you ready for when they need you, not when you're ready. I was ready,
Got
but
it.
it was slow, very
Yeah.
slow. I was certainly ready to go in a different way. I was in charge of this big contract, and I was supposed to go to Japan and deal with the contractors on some things, to start negotiations. And we had another person that was going to go with me. And they decided, without really explaining it to me or talking to me, that this other person was going to go. Even though she didn't have a lot of experience and she was junior, they were going to take her and not me. They didn't explain it very well. And it was really hard for me to take that. But it was at that point where I basically blew up at the person, but my supervisor, probably not the most pleasant conversation, but I realized I was at a point where I was trying to please, trying to do something that it was about me, not necessarily about anything else. It was more about me. And I had to do some soul searching on that.
Hmm.
I realized that I was going to work to try to make the next rank and be my best, but I realized that's not what I could be. God wanted me a different way. He wanted me to have a different mindset. It was what he wanted me to do. What I really needed to do was what he wanted me to do that day, not make the next rank,
Hmm.
not be promoted to this or that or make more money. It's about how can I influence others for Christ and help the business in a different way than me trying to just make the next rank.
Hmm.
And once I made that mindset switch, it was a totally different game. I loved my job was much more pleasant. I enjoyed being around other people more. They probably saw it better. My performance probably went up. So once I made that mindset shift, it was much better. Getting through that struggle was huge for me.
Marshall, buddy, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks so much for making time to be on the Invested Fathers today. We're here to talk about Marshall Sykes, your business, your fatherhood background. To just dive in right away, Marshall, could you leave us with something that you have learned, a key takeaway from your years of life in balancing fatherhood and business? What is something that you could just start the show off with? Hey, here's something that I'd love to share right out of the gates.
Yeah, I think the big thing with me is the feedback from my kids. My daughter will give me feedback. My son necessarily doesn't, but you got to take their feedback and figure out, hey, how can I help them? How can I help myself, help our family, and make that more important than my job or my business? One of the things they want to do is have dinner together every night. And so that's the one thing that I would say that's the transition piece in work. Sometimes you have to work after dinner, but most of the time they want to have that time with you. They have to do homework or whatever, but dinner time is family time, and that's very important to them, whether they give you that feedback or not.
Excellent. And we're going to explore ages of kids and other things, but I think it's great that what I heard you say was listen and even pull feedback from your most important audience, your family, and act on it. And it sounds like that family time at dinner has been a crucial point in the relationship of our kids. Cool. Marshall, tell us about your business. What's your background? Where you're from? How's everything going?
Yeah, my background is in project management. I'm a civil engineer by trade, also materials engineer. I have several degrees, but did mostly construction management, 25 years in the U.S. Navy, rose to the rank of captain. And then I went and worked in the oil and gas business for a number of years with ExxonMobil. And so I've had some pretty high level work experiences and some very thorough businesses, I guess, very mature business with the Navy and ExxonMobil, but really focused on project management. And so now I've transitioned from that to do real estate full time. So I'm an investor basically full time. I help other people invest in real estate and oil and gas as well. And so my business is Capitano Investing Group, and we raise capital and invest in deals with multifamily, build to rent communities, and oil and gas, and other type of alternative investments. Something other than the stock market. We don't get involved in that. But that's where my business is and what we do to help others.
Awesome. Man, what a list of different things. Project management, obviously being like the hat that you've probably worn in those different jobs. But I don't know a lot of people in oil and gas. So is that a really hard nut to crack and get into? Has that been a valley of your life or a mountain? How's that gone?
Yeah, the oil and gas business is a hard thing to get into. A lot of times, the oil and gas companies want to hire directly from college. And so they want to grow their people within their systems. Not everybody, but some companies do that.
Mhm.
For me, it was the right timing for coming out of the military. They also hire a lot of people coming out of the military. And I think you have to be ready for that coming out of the military. You have to, because it's not a transition. I was used to doing leadership and leadership focus in the Navy as well as projects. But like I had a 600 person engineering company I was running in the Navy. And then when I transitioned to ExxonMobil, it was a lot different. Going into corporate America, you're not necessarily going to run a big business and like you might have done in the military or do even 50 people. You might not do that. They want you to do individual contributions or a team contribution. So it's a little different. It was a good transition for me, but it was definitely some struggles that had to come through that with being in corporate America and being in different type of mindset.
I don't want to fast forward over the 25 years in the Navy. I feel like that's huge to your foundation of who you are. What are some values or things that were whether clarified from your time there or things that you learned specifically from your service? And thank you for your service, by the way, for doing that.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to serve the country. My dad was retired Army. I grew up as an Army brat. Most of the time, I didn't want to go in the military. I didn't understand the military role. I didn't understand there was a lot of different types of operations in the military, a lot of different types of careers. So I was really just focused on infantry. And that really wasn't what I was looking for.
Mhm.
I didn't realize they had engineers and all that stuff. But later on, I decided, hey, I'm going to go in the military and I'm going to go in for 4 years, get some work experience and kind of see where God takes that from there. But I actually loved the military. Once I got in, I loved the camaraderie. I loved the projects, the challenge, the personal challenge of growing and being at your best all the time.
Mhm.
That was exciting for me. I learned how to work with other people from all over the country, different types of mentality than I had maybe in different situations I grew up in, but I also enjoyed the travel. And my first duty stations was on the East Coast, North Carolina, where I grew up. Then I moved to California. Then from there, I went to Scotland and Italy and Guam and other places like that. So
Wow.
it became something that was an adventure for me. Each new duty station was an adventure for me and a new place to learn and grow and challenge me.
Awesome. No, that's really interesting. You mentioned your dad. Everyone has their own unique relationship with their dad in regards to maybe this is what my dad did. I'm either going to follow the path or I'm going to do the exact opposite because I just want to step my own thing. My dad has always owned rentals. And at an earlier age, let's just say 13, 15, 17 years old, I was turned off by what my dad was doing because I saw a certain side of his role, property manager, more or less. And I was like, why would anyone want to do this type of work? Just seems like such a hassle. I had no idea benefits of real estate. I just was very turned off to real estate. And I can actually remember my dad coming to me one time, I don't know, 22, 23 years old, about to get married. And he says, hey, Kenny, would you want to buy this house over here? Amazing deal. $100,000 worth this much. Probably it's worth $350,000 today or something like that. Didn't need any really work to it. But I was like, no, Dad, it's like another mortgage. Like, why would I want to do that? So just that thought of father's footsteps. Were you in a similar boat with, hey, Dad, Army, certain stuff? I don't want to you feel like you knew everything already, and then what caused you to switch that?
So that's funny, Kenny, that I actually grew up in my mom and dad built houses. I grew up building houses with them as a teenager. So they would build two at a time normally, and they would sell one to live off of and keep one as a rental. So I learned that model with them as well. But I hated construction. I hated being on the job site because I was a laborer. I didn't really know what was going on. I understood it a little bit, but not really. And so I wouldn't use my brain to think through things. And then I was more interested in engineering programs versus going in the military. But God had other plans for me, right? I actually, when I graduated with engineering school, it's hard to find a job. So I started looking in the military, ended up going into the military and doing civil engineering, construction management. So I did both the military and construction. It was just a different way of looking at it. But yeah, I definitely learned from my dad doing rentals and started owning rentals myself after a few years of being in the Navy. My wife and I decided to start acquiring properties as a way of getting extra income.
Yeah. So, invested fathers, obviously the topic of our podcast. It's helpful to get a quick snapshot of what your dad was like to help understand how you are today and also how you're leading your kids today. Could you describe, maybe give me a story of a time that stands out to you with growing up in your household with dad?
I'm one of 8 kids. I'm one of the youngest in the family. So my dad had a lot of kids, and we were all pretty close in age, like 11 years apart. So yeah, super mom, exactly. And super dad, really. For me, it was more with my dad being responsible on a daily basis with your finances, with your life, getting your exercise in, that type of thing was always important to him. Family time was important to him as well. I didn't always appreciate some things of that because I'm one of 8 kids. You're not as maybe don't have as much attention from your parents as you may have wanted,
Hmm.
or you want to do some other things that individually that maybe you didn't have an opportunity to have, the resources to have, or the time to have because you're committed to the family and what we had to do. We basically I learned teamwork. I remember in the Navy learning about team building or teamwork. And I'm like, this is pretty much second nature to me already because I grew up in a team. So it wasn't a shocker to me at all, something easily to adapt. But a story for my dad, it's just the day-to-day interaction of sacrificing for the family. I think it was the biggest thing that I remember from my dad.
Maybe fighting for attention, like you say, maybe at an earlier age, understanding, hey, I have this, I want to do karate or I want to do something over here, but we're not doing that. We're all going to do this group event over here. Sorry. Like we don't have time to have this individualized sort of plan for you, and how your mind maybe started making adjustments and realizing, okay, like I need to survive here, still want to thrive. And now as a dad, how many kids do you have at home?
I have 2 kids, both are in college.
So you've gone through those early formative years, teenager, well, I'm sure that maybe still teens to a degree there. How has growing up how you did affect how you're fathering, maybe when they were younger to even how you're fathering today?
I think for me, I probably tended to give them more things that they wanted more than I could have when I was growing up because we basically couldn't afford a lot of things. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 18, my brother was stationed in the Marine Corps in Hawaii, and I just finished my first year of college, and I saved up some money. I don't know how I did it, but I saved up some money to fly out to Hawaii for the summer and spend the summer with him. I worked when I was out there, but I spent the summer with him, and that was my first flight. I decided for my kids what I wanted to do, and we moved quite a bit, but we flew all the time. I would fly them and go on vacation together. A lot of people don't take their kids with them. I wanted to take my kids with me so they can experience international places and just understand the world is not just in your own little state, your own hometown.
Yeah.
So I think that was for me. I think it was more about travel and exploring, opening their minds to everything, what they could do, and not letting resources or money stop you from what God had in store for you.
Yeah. You mentioned God a couple times, and I think there's a sense of how big is your world? And I could even say, how big is your God as well? Let's break these boundaries of your own limited thinking of how big the world is. Tell me a little bit more about your faith. How has that affected growing up and being a recipient again of dad and also dadding as well?
Yeah. My oldest brother had gone to college and he actually had become a Christian in college. And he came back for the summer and worked with my dad or another construction group. He wanted to go to vacation Bible school, so a bunch of us went. And that's where I got introduced to Jesus and faith. It was a Methodist church. And that's where I became a Christian and grew from there. I guess at the start of that, God gave me a really strong desire for his word, to read the Bible, to understand what his Bible says.
Mhm.
And so that's something that really influenced me later in life. And I think for me, having that faith, knowing that God goes before me wherever I go and through prayer and where I go, but knowing that he's going to go before me and guide me and direct me
Mhm.
and give me the wisdom for situations has really helped me grow and not be afraid, to not have a limited mindset of I can't do this or how can I do this? Let God show you how you can do it.
So your brother was instrumental in bringing Christ to your family.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there were several, most of us are Christians now, most of my siblings. But yeah, definitely he was influential. You hit it right there. Very
How,
influential on the family.
how old were you during that vacation Bible school?
I was 13 years old.
That's amazing. I'm so excited to hear that story. I was just helping with my church's vacation Bible school. I've done it for the last, I think it's 4 years, but I left my W-2 job about three and a half years ago. And I was like a classroom guide for a full week. And part of me is like, man, this is just so much work. Like these kids are sucking the energy out of me. But that's such a, selfish. But think about the eternal value that played on your family. So that's really encouraging to hear how a kids program, Vacation Bible School, that I feel like everyone has heard, PBS, and how it changed the trajectory of your brother's life and your life as well, and a few maybe other family members. So you've taught your kids Christian values. That's been your upbringing for them. Maybe could you share how has that been a different upbringing than when you were growing up? Specifically, not that your parents were teaching you bad things. Your dad sounds like upstanding, great man with family values and discipline and get your work done, responsibility. Any comments there on insights into how raising, you were the first generation Christian here, second generation now. What are some things that you faced?
I think no matter what your faith is, it's got to be not in church, not in friends or your parents. It has to be in God. If it's not in God, then you're not connected with him. And he wants you to be connected with him, right? He wants you to have that
Yes.
personal relationship where he's living in your heart and he's guiding you on a daily basis. And so that's where if you start thinking about works or thinking about
Mm,
if I only do this, it's going to help me. No, it's really has to be, you have to be connected with God directly. And that's where I think that's what I've tried to
mm,
instill on my kids and make sure they understand that
yeah.
because my faith is not going to be their faith. They've got to have their own faith in God.
I'm so glad you said that. I struggled with that personally. I would consider myself a people pleaser. I feared disapproval and disappointment from my teachers and my parents hardcore growing up and my peers too, honestly. Like I was a chameleon. What would make you happy is what I wanted to say and do. And it really wasn't until I hit college. And you said your kids are in college now.
They're in college.
I think when the kids leave is a very telling time of what stuck and what do they believe, because you're now out of the picture. And of course, even after college, it just continues to be more independence. But I left college and I realized, hey, and I went to a Christian college. These guys I'm going to school with, they're going to like a Bible study with no one telling them they have to do this. There's no parental or teacher pressure on worshiping God and singing. And it was a new world for me. I had experienced that in my life. And that was a telling time where I did take Jesus as my own personal savior. I had known everything. I think I was a born again believer before then, but there was a renewed relationship that strengthened me in my faith. So cool. Have your kids had any feedback on leaving the house? And are they out of the house or are they staying on campus?
Yeah, my daughter has her own apartment, but my son is in his dorm. It's up to them to decide how they're going to do their faith. I encourage it, no doubt. I
Right.
encourage it plenty,
Right.
but they have to make that decision and go forward with it. But I've certainly encouraged it and provide for them to be able to do that.
Cool. No, that's great, Marshall. All right. Tell me more. Let's talk about, you had quite an extensive background in your business. We know a little more about the faith and fathering to a degree. The kids are in college now. Tell us some stories about where there's some hard times in doing, like making decisions on that good old work-life balance. Could you tell us a
Right.
story about a lesson learned along the way or a struggle that happened while you were doing all these Exxon, your capital raising now, multifamily, obviously the years of experience in the Navy, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think the struggle I had was more about, I think when I did get into corporate America was having been in the Navy so long, your focus and mindset is always making the next rank, getting the next job, the next career path, next career, going up the ladder, basically, is a corporate America term.
Mhm.
And when I got to Exxon, I still had that same mindset. I think most people do when they go into corporate America, but it was a struggle for me to, corporate America says they want, in businesses, they want to keep you ready for when they need you, not when you're ready. I was ready,
Got
but
it.
it was slow, very
Yeah.
slow. I was certainly ready to go in a different way. I was in charge of this big contract, and I was supposed to go to Japan and deal with the contractors on some things, to start negotiations. And we had another person that was going to go with me. And they decided, without really explaining it to me or talking to me, that this other person was going to go. Even though she didn't have a lot of experience and she was junior, they were going to take her and not me. They didn't explain it very well. And it was really hard for me to take that. But it was at that point where I basically blew up at the person, but my supervisor, probably not the most pleasant conversation, but I realized I was at a point where I was trying to please, trying to do something that it was about me, not necessarily about anything else. It was more about me. And I had to do some soul searching on that.
Hmm.
I realized that I was going to work to try to make the next rank and be, I don't know, my best or whatever. But I realized that's not what I could be. God wanted me a different way. He wanted me to have a different mindset. It was what He wanted me to do. What I really needed to do was what He wanted me to do that day,
Hmm.
not make the next rank,
Hmm.
not be promoted to this or that or make more money. It's about how can I influence others for Christ and help the business in a different way than me trying to just make the next rank.
Hmm.
And once I made that mindset switch, it was a totally different game. I loved my job was much more pleasant. I enjoyed being around other people more. They probably saw it better. My performance probably went up. It was all those things. So once I made that mindset shift, it was much better. Getting through that struggle was huge for me.
That's really interesting. I feel on this show, and you talk about money, LinkedIn, there's a little bit of this sense of if you're not the top dog, or if you're not climbing that ladder, if you're not your own boss, whatever it is that's you have to do this if you want to be happy, or even a Christian, then you have to follow this way. And I've had my own soul searching moments in regards to things that really jostled me. I mean, you said you blew up. Like there was
All the emotions came out of
all
me.
the
Yeah.
emotions came out, good, bad, and ugly. They came out, and it caused this moment of reevaluation, reflection, and through prayer and God showing you, you can still be happy, successful, utilized from me, like doing what I want you to do in this role. You said helping the business, like taking the attention off yourself, helping the business. What could you maybe go a little more on that? What did that look like?
I think it's more about helping other people in the business. For me, I felt like I was helping other people, but it might have been more about me to look good or be the guy. But after that mindset shift, I realized that I could help others grow and help them with their struggles. I was open more to that, or people were more open to me if I was always for friendly guys, so it's not that. It's
Right.
but just more willing to take the time to help other people, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could even add potentially, without knowing you inside your mind, but you were willing to invest in other people for their joy. It wasn't about the money. Like before, there's that sense of success and like looking good and just getting that next step, ladder, whatever rung. But something said it's maybe more about just helping the team here. And that's awesome.
Yeah. It's not like I didn't have that mindset before helping the team, but it was
Right.
a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And it really made a difference in my day-to-day
Yeah.
disposition. Yes.
Yeah. We're wrapping up here. I want to be able to give you a moment to say listening to your kids was a key takeaway in your life. Advice to dads today. We have all walks of life listening, young kids, older kids, retired, grinding out growth strategy. Leave us with something that you could say. Here's a key takeaway for you all.
I think for a lot of guys that were very goal driven or driven people, especially if you are, then you got to realize that life's not about you, and especially family is not about you. And you've got to allow. I felt like I had to allow room for what my kids wanted, what my wife wants. I need to have more flexibility to be able to allow that and not always think about my schedule or getting things, my to-do list. It's not about those things. It's about them, not you. And I'm a guy who likes to plan everything out and do on schedule to death. And I realize that doesn't always work. And so you got to allow some flexibility in your life and your schedule. So that's my advice.
That's beautiful. I needed that today. Thank you very much. Marshall, if our audience wanted to find more about the capital raising stuff you're doing, investments, or just they want to get to know you better, how would you direct them to keep up with you?
Yeah, they can go to investwiththecaptain.com. I have a free resource there that they can download and connect with me that way, or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Marshall, thank you so much for your time today, brother. Best wishes with everything you're working on. Thank you for your fatherhood, sacrifices, and leadership in the household, and for all the nuggets you left with the audience today. Take care.
Thank you, Kenny, for having me. Appreciate your platform and all your work in this area. It's very needed in today's world.
Thank you.